Ora, muito bom dia para todos. Good morning, everyone from California. Good afternoon. Muito boa tarde para aqueles que nos acompanham na costa leste dos Estados Unidos da América e do Canadá. And of course, good afternoon or good evening to those following us in different parts of the world, from Brazil to Mozambique, from Portugal to Angola. And any other countries. So, muito boa tarde para aqueles, como eu disse, que nos acompanham na Costa Leste, ainda bom dia aqui na Califórnia, e para aqueles que nos acompanham, portanto, em Portugal, do Brasil, também ainda boa tarde, apesar de em Portugal já ser boa tarde, uma tarde a querer ser noite. E obviamente também para aqueles que nos acompanham nos países de expressão portuguesa em África e em outras partes do mundo. Este é o projeto do PBB, Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute, da Universidade Estadual da Califórnia em Fresno, que tem como principal a curadora, a poeta Rose Angelina Batista, a quem agradeço a sua colaboração e a sua amizade e a sua poesia, e obviamente toda a sua organização neste projeto. O PBB, I'll say this bilingual as well, so o Instituto Português Além Fronteiras, ou Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute, pertence à Universidade Estadual da Califórnia em Fresno, é um projeto que acaba de celebrar 5 anos e há pouco mais de um ano começamos este projeto de leituras bilíngues, de poetas de expressão portuguesa, de língua inglesa, mas traduzidos para português, para aproximar, obviamente, a cultura, para aproximar a poesia e para aproximar estes mundos da lusofonia que são tão ricos e que estão um pouco por todo o planeta. Um abraço para todos desde a cidade de Fresno, no centro da Califórnia. So, good afternoon again to those in the East Coast. Good morning here, California. Good afternoon to those or good evening to those in other parts of the Portuguese-speaking world. Our bilingual series will start. We're very thrilled to have all of these excellent poets with us. We are expecting one more poet from Mozambique. Hopefully, Ernesto will be able to join us as well. And I want to thank our co-curator and co-conspirator, let's put it that way, in these events, and that is poet Rose Angelina Batista from Florida for all of her work on behalf of the Alfred Lewis Bilingual Poetry Reading Series. This is the series number 6 of what we hope to have 8, so a couple of more, one this summer and one this fall. And then our objective is in 2025 to publish a book with all of the poems that have been read throughout the 8 series. So it'll be a fun book that we can have as something also to promote and cultural classes that relate to the Portuguese and the Portuguese world from different diasporas as well. We are going to start by, as we always do, with a poem dedicated to Alfred Lewis, to our patron, and the poem is called Aventura Vietnam, or a Adventure Vietnam. It's from the book Aguarelas Florentinas e Outras Poesias, published in 1986. That really does need to be republished because there are other poems that we could actually add for Alfred. And we're going to read it. Rose is going to read it in Portuguese. I will read it in English. The poem was originally translated in Portuguese. And the interesting thing about this poem, of course, the title says it all, Aventura Vietnam, is that we are 2 days away from the 25th of April Revolution, a 25 de Abril, em que Portugal was in a bloody wars, 3 wars in 3 different fronts in Africa, and it was kind of our Vietnam for about 14 or 15 years. And Alfred writes about this poem, and I'm sure you will all get that from the aspect of Vietnam, but also a little bit about what was going on in Portugal. He touches upon that. Rose, em português.
De Alfred Lewis, Aventura Vietnam. Aos pais e mães que os perderam. Chegou a hora. Beijou a mãe, a irmã, era ainda pequena, e disse ao pai que agora é que era o tempo de partir. Fazer o seu dever, voltar em breve, o mais breve possível, para completar os planos de sua vida. Agora é que era o tempo, enquanto a juventude pensava nas proezas do passado. E a música das bandas, estridente, arrepiava o manto azul dos montes. E os aromas de casa, o som, as cores, o voar das aves, tudo ficou atrás, ficou coberto da distância nebulosa do mar. Membro da tropa, nada lhe faltou. Comida, farda, munições e armas. Aprendeu a matar, soube ser fera. Era a questão de vida contra vida, na lama ensanguentada da batalha. Voltou a casa um dia. Houve discursos ao pé da cova dele. Um capitão ereto leu uma carta, apresentou medalhas à família de luto. Finalmente, o som de uma trombeta anunciou o fim da cena. E os melros invadiram uma vez mais o seu país de paz, que dá entrada a todos, novos, velhos, seus planos do passado, as ilusões do outrora.
Obrigado, Rose. Let's try it in English. Adventure Vietnam. To the parents who lost them. The time had come. He kissed his mother, his sister. She was still very young, and told his father that now was the time to leave, to do his duty, to come back soon as possible, to complete his life's plans. Now was the time. While his youth thought of the exploits of the past, and the music of the bands billowing chilled the blue mantle of the hills. And the sense of home, the sounds, the colors, the flight of the birds, everything was left behind. It was covered in the misty distance of the sea. He lacked nothing as a member of the troops: food, uniform, ammunition, weapons. He learned to kill. He learned to be a beast. It was a matter of life against life in the bloody mud of the battle. He came home one day. There were speeches at the foot of his grave. An erect captain read a letter, presented medals. The family mourned. Finally, the sound of a trumpet announced the end of the scene, and the blackbirds invaded once more his peaceful country, which welcomes everyone, young and old, their plans of the past, the illusions of bygone times. From Alfred Lewis. And so, from that, we will go to our first guests. And since, of course, as we mentioned, I don't believe, I'll check one more time here on my little list here, but I don't think that Ernesto is here. So we'll go to Brazil instead of Mozambique. And André Vaz de Campos Tourinho, who has is very young, as you can see, all of you, but has indeed already a curriculum in poetry and in culture, has contributed immensely to the letters in the Portuguese language and beyond. André, welcome. Bem-vindo.
Thank you very much for having me. Such a blast to be here, getting to know different poems and poets from United States, Portugal, etc. So it's such a pleasure and an honor to be here, reading in Portuguese and also in English.
Muito bem. So if you want to start, I don't know which one you'd like to start first, but up to you. I think you're probably going to read your poem that you have in English first. Is that okay, André?
Of course, let's get started. It's called Moment in Life. To endure a body as a cage in which I'm forced to stay takes so much more than guts, feet as chains sinking into earth, worsening no slavery compared to. At least there will be freedom letters, cherishing eyes on starless roofs. As long as I'm alive, doomed prisoner. My sweet denier, call it as you prefer, shell armor, even home underneath. This flesh still will be serving reminders of us beggars in shrill humanity, goosebumps for euphoric dancing bells, to come atop the highest cathedral, preaching an exhausted breath as finally, when I will at last be freed from myself. So I produced a version in Portuguese. It was the first time that I actually have written a poem in English first, then trying to translate it into Portuguese. So it was such an opportunity to try. Momento na vida. Suportar um corpo enquanto gaiola, onde as forças me fazem residente, requer muito mais do que peito. Olha, os pés se afundando como correntes. Não há escravidão pior que se veja. Ao menos teria cartas de euforia, nutrindo o olhar nos tetos sem estrela. Já eu, ao viver, sou cativo da ruína. Doce negador, tanto faz se chamas, de concha, armadura ou até lar por dentro. Esta carne, ela ainda dará lembranças do quanto somos mendigos ao extremo. Arrepios aos sinos dançantes de ímpeto, no topo da mais alta catedral, marcarão meu exausto sopro final, ao ser, enfim, liberto de mim mesmo. That was the first one. I hope it worked. Which one would you like to be the next?
Whichever you choose. I will read in English, which one you choose in Portuguese.
Perfectly. So I'm going to read in Portuguese, Polo em Fuligem. Por todas as graças que decorrem, se uma mulher sobre a pele de seu homem, extraída a fuligem, tóxica de pólen, e nesse gesto de gratuidade, com espécie de gozo suspensor, ao som de inéditas de Mozart, respinga a paz em vez de devastá-lo, como um dragão lançando lume em flor. Uma embriaguez dupla é clarividente, quando o presente se faz relicário, reluzindo a memória pelos ângulos, transbordando essa gota de glória, por anos, córrego entre gerações.
Muito bem, excelente. Vamos tentar em inglês agora. Portanto, Pollen and Grit. For all the graces that flow, if a woman on her man's skin extracts touches of pollen from the grits, and in this gesture of gratuitousness, with a kind of suspended joy to the sound of Mozart's unpublished works, breathing peace instead of devastation, like a dragon casting fire on a flower. A double intoxication is glaring when the present becomes a relic, relighting memory from the angles, overflowing this drop of glory for years, a stream between generations.
It was such a blast to hear in English. Now the final one, súplica e remédio. Visualizando sob um teto, algo de céu, virtual, Deus talvez, a dizer mudo tudo o que peço, nesta minha tanto mais que frágil condição de ser fugacidade. É que assim e só, por mais singelo, cada segundo que de mim passe, seja de todo um significado. Levito para fora do quarto e acho de costas forma pulsante de sangue e abraço incontrolável. Vem voz, olhos interrogativos de uma irmã. O que aconteceu? Fala. Nada lhe explico, apenas persisto na súplica de quem não se basta.
Plea and remedy. Seeing under your roof something of heaven, virtual, God, perhaps, saying mutely, all I ask in this more than fragile condition of being elusive, like this and alone, no matter how simple, every second that passes from me becomes completely meaningful. I rise out of the moon and I find a pulsating form on my back with blood and an uncontrollable embrace. There's a voice, questioning eyes. Hey, sisters, what happened? Speak. I don't explain anything. I merely persist in the plea of someone who can't get enough.
Thank you very much for translating, for having me here. It was so nice to hear in different language the same message. I guess you did a great work. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, André. Muito obrigado. E continuo a escrever poesia. E continuo e grato pela sua participação. E um dia esperemos que seja ao vivo aqui na Califórnia. From André, we will go to Alison. And Alison is also, like all of the people here on this panel, an amazing poet. I have her book here. I've read it and reread it actually, because it's very well done. She's a daring poet, let me put it that way, with talent. So Alison, welcome. We're so happy. She's won quite a few awards, as many of you have also, and it's a pleasure to have her here. She has, I believe, roots also in Portugal, in the Azores, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, correct. Enos family. Thank you. Do you want to read the Portuguese first, or do you want me to read in English first?
I'd rather you read the English if you don't mind. That way they can get the real thing, and then we can do the poor imitation.
Okay, all right. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you for the invitation along these amazing voices, and really wonderful to spend time here today. Thank you. These are both excerpts from my latest book, which is a book-length poem or assemblage poem that is book-length. So 2 small excerpts. Look at this blue whale alongside Monterey, San Diego, Baja. Gentle giant, heaviest animal to ever live on Earth. Twice Argentinosaurus. Ship strikes kill 11 per year, US West Coast. With ship increase, population will be depleted. Noise, military testing, sonic battery, chemicals, plastics, krill, anchovy, tiny fish, tiny crustaceans absorb microplastics. A blue whale eats between 2 and 4 tons of krill per day. Blue, with a belly full of plastics.
Wonderful. So, em português, como disse a Alison, isto é, são 2 excertos de um livro que é de um poema, que é, na realidade, o livro todo. Portanto, o livro, the entire book is a poem, and it's lovely. It's just really, really, really beautiful. Olhem para este azul. Baleia azul ao lado de Monterrey, San Diego, Baixa Califórnia, gigante, gentil, animal mais pesado que já se viveu na Terra, 2 vezes argentinossauros. Os embates com navios matam 11 por ano. Costa oeste dos Estados Unidos, e com o aumento dos navios, a população vai se esgotar. Ruído, testes militares, bateria sónica, químicos, plásticos, krill enxove, peixes minúsculos, crustáceos minúsculos absorvem microplásticos. Uma baleia azul come entre 2 a 4 toneladas de krill por dia. Azul, com a barriga cheia de plásticos.
Thank you. And the next excerpt is a bit of an interlude after some very heavy pieces on either side. Let love lead. Let hand that pummeled rest. Let scowl rest. Face relieve. Let shoulders locked high tight recede. Let feet cracked worn ease. Let back stiff sore bend open. Let long swell breath like ocean. Let all of us, all of us, all of us, let all of us be unbroken. Take heart. Earth hears every tremble. Touch fills each foot. Listens now. Bring her justice, protection, peace.
Deixem o amor liderar. Deixem descansar a mão que batiu. Deixem a carranca descansar, o rosto aliviar-se. Que os ombros fechados, altos, apertados recuem. Que os pés gretados, gastos se aliviem. Que as costas rígidas, doridas se abram. Que os pulmões inchem e respirem como o oceano. Que todos nós, todos nós, todos nós, que todos nós sejamos inquebráveis. Tenham dó. A terra ouve cada toque trêmulo. Sente cada pé. Escuta agora. Tragam-lhe justiça, proteção, paz. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you for the Portuguese translation. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. I want to do more. So we'll talk. And and since as I said, Ernesto from Mozambique could not join us. Something might have came up. That happens, and sometimes internet doesn't want to be collaborative with our work, and so we're going to Sue, and then from Sue our Rose. Before I turn over to Sue, I just wanted to again thank everyone who's joining us here, and thank some of the poets who are joining us on our Facebook page. We have quite a few, and I just wanted a big shout out to all of the folks who are following us on the social media outlet, but especially poet Regina Correia from Portugal, who is a superb poet, whose work is being translated to English. Parabéns, Regina, and João Rasteiro as well, who just won the Natalia Correia Award for poetry last year, and he's following us as well here. Appreciate it. João's work is also being translated to English. So we will now go to Sue Lick. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. You know, I don't get every Portuguese word, but it's so beautiful.
You understand a bit, I believe.
A bit, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sue has written many books, and including a great book. I mean, they're all good. They're all great books, and she's done a lot of great poetry. But just a book about Portuguese women, which is still the canon book for Portuguese women in California. Stories
Yes.
grandmother never told me, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm just reading off remembering off the top of my head, but I think that's the title. Am I correct, Sue, or somewhere close to
Stories
it?
Grandma Never Told.
That's right. Yeah. Congrats on that. That's a wonderful contribution to the Portuguese American experience. Anyway, let's talk about poetry.
Yes, well, you know, that book is still very close to my heart. Yeah, I have 2 new books of poetry this year, which is kind of amazing. And one is called Blue Chip Stamp Guitar, and I will read the first poem from that, and then I'll share one other from the other book. This is called The Girl with the Pretty Voice. I was the girl with the pretty voice, when what I really wanted was power, a big whiskey-tinged howl of a sound that would impress the men in the band, and make women sit up and listen. You have such a pretty voice, they said, but it never seemed to be loud enough. And when I sang alone, solo on the stage, it sounded like a quartet missing 3, a flute without the orchestra. Always I guarded my pretty voice, sucking lozenges, warming up, never yelling at football games, panicking at the least hint of pain, afraid my pretty voice would go away. When a cold threatened my pretty voice, I enjoyed that smoky first day sound of a floozy flirting at a bar. But when it progressed into laryngitis, I gargled salt, sipped tea, and prayed. As I aged, my pretty voice deepened. It grew dry and rusty, running low, like honey at the end of the jar. I doled it out in trickles, each time harder to get enough. I feared I was losing my pretty voice. If so, I would play the guitar, for its steel strings could be tuned or replaced, unlike my tired, ragged vocal cords that flapped like sheets in the breeze. Now the pretty voice has changed, deepened by time and wear and tears. Not the supple soprano of my youth, but it holds every song that I have lived. It's no longer pretty, but it's beautiful.
A rapariga com uma voz bonita. Eu era a rapariga com uma voz bonita quando o que eu realmente queria era poder. Um grande uivo de whisky num som que impressionasse os homens da banda e que fizesse as mulheres sentarem-se e ouvirem. Tens uma voz tão bonita, diziam eles, mas nunca parecias ser suficientemente alta. E quando cantava sozinha, a solo no palco, soava como um quarteto que faltavam três, uma flauta sem orquestra. Guardava sempre a minha bela voz, chupando pastilhas, aquecendo-me, nunca gritava nos jogos de futebol, entrando em pânico ao menor sinal de dor, com medo que a minha voz bonita se desvanecesse. Quando uma gripe ameaçava a minha bela voz, eu gostava daquele som esfumaçado do primeiro dia de uma galdéria a namoriscar num bar. Mas quando progredia para a laringite, gaguejava sal, bebia chá e rezava. À medida que fui envelhecendo, a minha voz bonita foi se tornando mais profunda, tornou-se seca e enferrujada, a escassear, como o mel no fundo do frasco. Eu distribuí-o em gotas, cada vez mais difícil de obter o suficiente. Temia estar a perder a minha bela voz. Se assim fosse, tocaria guitarra, porque as suas cordas de aço podiam ser afinadas ou substituídas, ao contrário das minhas cordas vocais cansadas e esfarrapadas, que se agitavam como lençóis ao sabor da visa. Agora, a voz bonita mudou, aprofundada pelo tempo, pelo desgaste e pelas lágrimas. Não é o soprano flexível da minha juventude, mas guarda todas as canções que vivi. Já não é bonita, mas é bela.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay. And the other book is called Dining al Fresco with My Dog. This is called Kneading with a K, Kneading. Radio blasting news, she stands at the sink, massaging woolite into her red sweater as the water turns pink. Her hands knead wool as if it were dough for homemade bread that she will eat warm, dripping with butter. Or his stiff shoulders, her fingers rub, squeeze, flatten, and fold, working in circles, pushing hard, harder as he moans. But this is just a sweater. Rinsing away the soap, she lifts it out, heavy, dripping on her feet. Her old fingers ache.
Amassando. A rádio está a dar notícias, ela está no balcão da pia massajando o woolite na sua camisola vermelha enquanto a água fica a cor de rosa. As suas mãos amassam a lã como se fosse massa para pão caseiro que ela vai comer quente com a manteiga a pingar, ou os seus ombros rígidos. Os seus dedos esfregam, apertam, achatam e dobram, trabalhando em círculos, empurrando com força mais forte enquanto ele geme. Mas isto é apenas uma camisola. Enxaguando o sabão, ela levanta, pesada, a pingar-lhe nos pés. doem-lhe os dedos velhos.
Obrigado.
Oh, I like the Portuguese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The third poem it's about my grandfather, and his family came from Pico, and he grew up in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and when his father died at sea, he was a fisherman. The family moved to California. So this is the story of Saint Albert of Santa Clara. He wasn't a carpenter like Jesus's dad. His days were spent in the canning shed, the boards underfoot slick with juice, the air a cold cocktail of stinking fruit, leading the aproned women who cut the cots, sliced the peaches, and sorted the prunes, who sent them down the conveyor belt to the men who sealed them in the cans. His name wasn't Joseph, but Albert. He spoke Portuguese, not Aramaic. His children weren't born in a manger, and he may have never seen an angel, this workman in flannel and long johns about whom we don't know too much. No, Albert wasn't Jewish, Catholic. He joked that the roof would collapse if he dared to enter the church after years of dropping wife and kids at the door. Did he go home and mow the lawn? Kick back with a beer in a Giants game? Did he park overlooking the Alviso Slough and remember his boyhood in Gloucester, his fisherman father who died at sea, the stepdad who moved them to California? Or did he just sit in the Chevy smoking his pipe, shaking his head at the ladies' feathered hats and the men in their stretched out Sunday suits? People called Albert a saint because he put up with Annie, his wife, who gossiped and complained and wanted. Quiet, he puffed on his pipe and did her bidding, tilling a new flower bed, building a shelf, or fetching linguiça to feed the family on Christmas Eve. Yes, dear, he'd say with a smile. Al never fled to Egypt, but he drove to San Diego once, only to learn, by telephone, not angels in a dream, that God had chosen his only son to suffer, not on a cross, but in a hospital bed, paralyzed, nailed to the scratchy sheets, asking, "Why has God forsaken me?" Haggard, suddenly old, Al and Annie drove through the rainy winter night. She wailed at his side, my son," while he steered them through the storm, then ran up the slippery hospital steps, gazed upon his son's familiar face, and surrendered his life to care for him. In time, like Joseph, Albert silently fell ill and died. At his funeral, he finally re-entered the church. The steepled roof did not fall down. God had been saving him a place. St. Joseph reached out his hand. "Come, my brother, welcome home."
Wonderful tribute, Sue. Thank you so much. And this, by the way, I just have to take about a second to plug this. This is included in the anthology. This is a shameless plug, but it's included in the anthology Into the Azorian Sea. I think Sue and all the poets who agreed to this journey, and we're looking forward to maybe because it's been doing well in the Azores of all places, which is great. It's bilingual, and we may have a second edition, and if we do, we'd love to include a few others that were not included in the beginning, such as Alison and a few other poets. So in Portuguese, let me try this. It's sung. Before I do, I just wanted to also mention two other things, which is of course, we thank everyone who's accompanying us at the various social media outlets, but we just had a couple of comments that I'd like to acknowledge and thank Luís Filipe Sarmento, who is most astonishing poet from Portugal. Thanks for joining us and being here with us. And Lara Goulart, our good friend from California, who's actually traveling throughout Central America, is also joining us, I believe, in Costa Rica or someplace like that. Thank you, Lara. São Alberto de Santa Clara. And precisely just for those, I chose São Alberto instead of Santo Alberto, because those who know the Portuguese language, São is a bit different than Santo. And by reading Sue's, I just have to make this explanation, by reading Sue's poem a couple of times, I believe that what she was trying to reach at and did very well is São Alberto and not Santo Alberto. So, não era carpinteiro como o pai de Jesus. Os seus dias eram passados no barracão do enlatamento, as tábuas debaixo dos pés, escorregadias, consumo, o ar, um cocktail frio de fruta mal cheirosa, guiando as mulheres de avental que cortam as frutas, cortavam os pêssegos e separavam as ameixas secas, enviando-os pela correia transportadora aos homens que se selavam em latas. O seu nome não era José, mas Alberto. Falava português e não aramaico. Os seus filhos não nasceram numa manjedoura. Pode nunca ter visto um anjo. Este trabalhador com camisa de flanela e cerolas, sobre o qual não sabemos grande coisa. Não, Alberto não era judeu, católico. Ele gozava e um santo cairia do altar se ele se atrevesse a entrar na igreja após anos de deixar a mulher e os filhos à porta. Será que foi para casa cortar a relva? Foi descansar com uma cerveja e um jogo de beisebol dos Giants? Estacionou com vista para o charco de Alviso a recordar a sua infância em Gloucester. O seu pai pescador que morreu no mar? O padrasto que os trouxe para a Califórnia? Ou será que se limitou a sentar-se no Chevrolet, a fumar o seu cachimbo, sacudindo a cabeça perante os chapéus de penas das mulheres e os homens com os seus esticadíssimos fatos domingueiros? As pessoas diziam que o Alberto era um santo, porque ele aturava a Annie, sua mulher, que mexericava, queixava-se e queria tudo. Silêncio, soprou no seu cachimbo e fez a sua proposta, cultivando um novo canteiro de flores, construindo uma prateleira ou trazendo toros de linguiça para abastecer a família na véspera de Natal. Sim, querida, dizia ele com um sorriso. Aí nunca fugiu, Al nunca fugiu para o Egito. Mas ele conduziu para San Diego uma vez, apenas para aprender por telefone, não por anjos num sonho, que Deus tinha escolhido o seu único filho para sofrer, não numa cruz, mas numa cama de hospital, paralisado, preso aos lençóis arranhados, perguntando por que é que Deus me abandonou. Abatido, repentinamente velho, Al e Annie conduziram durante toda a noite chuvosa do inverno. Ele chorava a seu lado, meu filho, enquanto ele os conduzia pela tempestade, depois subiu os degraus escorregadios do hospital, olhou para o rosto familiar do seu filho e entregou-se totalmente a cuidar dele. Como o tempo, tal como José de Nazaré, Roberto silenciosamente adoeceu e morreu. No seu funeral, finalmente reentrou à igreja. Nenhum santo caiu do altar. Deus tinha-lhe reservado um lugar. São José estendeu a sua mão. Vem, meu irmão. Bem-vindo a casa. The Sue. Thank you.
I'm feeling teary because I wish my grandparents could hear it in their own language.
I wish they could too. I know they would. I know they would love it. But as my grandmother would tell me, not that we all could become teary-eyed, but I came to this country at the age of 10, and my best friend was my grandmother, and we went to visit when I was 14, and my best friend was still my grandmother, on my dad's my paternal grandmother, and she said this lovely thing as she was very very emotional about me leaving because she thought she would never see me again, and indeed
Yes.
she didn't. She died 2 years later.
Mm.
And I was sad because I was 14, but I was a teenager, but she was still a very special person, still is. And she said this to me that I always say to every person when we talk about this. She said this woman could not read or write. And she said to me, and I'll say it in Portuguese, eu nunca morrerei. Guarda no teu coração um lugarinho e a avó estará sempre viva. I'll never die. Just leave a small space in your heart and a avó will always live. So they're living through you. Thanks, Sue.
Obrigada.
Rose, vamos acabar antes da gente todos começar a chorar. Não.
Os cravos não falam. Para Celeste Martins Caieiro. um cravo vermelho incerto no cano do saúda o olhar, com inesgotável emoção, e clama uma atitude apaixonada de escuta dessa atirada flor certeira. Mas os cravos não falam. Calmos, distribuem o segredo de como floresceram para Celeste a guarda-volumes da loja e mãe solteira que se juntou na Praça do Rocio, com suas braçadas de cravos. Se juntou à repulsa do povo, de manhã cedinho, contra a guerra e fome. Calmos os cravos, dão conforto às mãos que portam suas hastes estreitas rumo ao largo do Carmo. E naquele abril, que ergueu a cabeça encarnada, vazou a bruma, varou o anil, ergueu a mira, saiu de casa para alívio das angústias. Influiu o milagre d'alma, a matéria sem par, sem vida. Deu sua haste, deu seu cálice, as granadas, baionetas ao fuzil. Carnations don't speak. For Celeste Martins Caeiro. A red carnation in the gun barrel greets the gaze with inexhaustible emotion and calls for a passionate attitude of listening to this well-aimed flower. But carnations don't speak. Calmly, they share secrets, such as how they bloomed for Celeste, a locker room attendant and mother alone, as she gathered at the Rocio Square with armfuls of fresh carnations, with the people's groan, early morning to end war and woe. Calmly, carnations provide comfort to the yearning hands that carry their narrow stem through the Largo of Carmo. And in that April, you held your crimson head high, clearing the mist, piercing the blue, raising the aim, leaving home for the relief of anguish, infusing the miracle of the soul to lifeless matter, impaired life. You raised your stem, raised your chalice to seize grenades, bayonets, and rifles.
Thank you, Rose, and very appropriate for 2 days before the Carnation Revolution, and a very wonderful homage, uma linda homenagem. Ai, tenho cravo. Uma linda homenagem, ou cravos, vários. Uma linda homenagem à Celeste Caeiro. For those of you, just really quick, so Rose's poem is a dedication, as she mentioned, to Celeste Caeiro, which was the woman that basically is responsible in kind of a awkward way to for us knowing the April 25th revolution in Portugal that brought democracy to Portugal as a Carnation Revolution. So, and it's a wonderful poem, wonderful testament to her courage and to her vision and to her Celeste worked at a restaurant, was told to go home. There's a revolution. There was a bunch of carnations the restaurant was going to put on the tables. You know, this was the day when restaurants had real flowers and not the plastic things. And so she took the boss told her, take the carnations home. And Celeste did, and she was going by, and one of the soldiers. Now the soldiers had been, going on all night long. Coming from different parts of Portugal to all come to Lisbon, and so they had been traveling for 10, 12 hours, 14. And at that time, this was of course 1974. A lot of people still smoked in Portugal, and they asked her, "You have a cigarette?" And she said, "No, I don't smoke, but here's the carnation." And the carnation was put on the guns, and the carnation became the symbol of peace for the revolution and for the soldiers to show that they were there to change something, not to provoke another war. They wanted to end wars. And Rose's poem touches on all that very eloquently. Thank you so much, Rose. Appreciate that. Very, very fitting for the 25 de Abril. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Rose. We missed Ernesto. Hopefully, we can have him back another time. We will be back with another one of the Alfred Lewis bilingual reading series in July, and then the last one for this year. This was our second one. We had January, April, July, and October. And then Rose has promised me that she'll be working hard as she always does with me on this, so we can publish your works in a collection dedicated to Alfred Lewis and to the Portuguese experience, poetry experience throughout the world, hopefully in March or April of next year. So thank you all, and maybe we can all meet somewhere, at least virtually, and celebrate that. Thank you all for attending. Thanks to all of you on social media that are attending. Thanks to all of you here. Thanks to the students who are here as well from Fresno State, Portuguese 1A and Portuguese 1B class. And thanks to the poets. Muito obrigado, André, Sue, Alison e, claro que, a co-curadora Rose. Abraço para todos. Thank you all. E viva a poesia. Especially, and buy their books, by the way, because this is International World Book Day. So buy their books and support their work. Thank you all. Muito obrigado a todos. Bom dia ou boa tarde.